Smart strategy, real conversations, bigger margins. This is Chasing the Margin podcast.
Welcome back to Chasing the Margin. Today we have Mr. Sean Turner. So Sean,
Woo-hoo.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. We're excited to have you too. I didn't realize, like I mentioned when we were just chatting, that you're a podcast expert. So glad that we have at least one on the podcast finally.
No. I'm not. I don't know that I'm an expert, but maybe it's just because I can talk to a brick wall, you know?
Yeah, we'll leave you in here and let you chat by yourself for a little while when I need a bathroom break.
blink twice if I'm talking too long.
Definitely not. Well, Sean, kind of tell us generally who you are, what you do. Give a little background about what you are.
Yeah, so I grew up family here in Texas. I've lived in Texas almost my entire life. And, you know, there's people every single day. You're like, where'd you move from? Washington, California. It's like, oh, I'm so glad you're here. I'm glad you're part of the party. But no, I've lived here my whole life. I went to University of Texas at Arlington and ended up enlisting into the military from there. After enlisting, it took me 7 years to graduate college. And so I got a degree in economics, got to spend a lot of time in the military, in the infantry, in the Army, and I loved it. And then ended up getting married. And then while we were on our second kid, I really felt like the Lord just planted an idea to start my own business in my heart, and I couldn't ignore it. And so we were at literally the worst time. You know, most people start a business, they have capital saved up, they have like an extensive business plan, they've gotten several mentors to kind of coach them through it. I had none of that. And so don't take my advice. But no, thankfully we've been able to grow that business. And so our company that we started is started just as an insurance agency. Now we've expanded to quite a few different areas within the insurance realm.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't know if it's just me, but maybe I just attract these guests. It seems like every time I have a guest come on, they're like, yeah, so I started my business while I was doing all of these very difficult things in life. So,
boom.
Yeah, for some reason, all these people like to start businesses during the most challenging times of their lives.
I know. And talk about when that's maybe a good thing because,
yeah.
I mean, I had one, I think she might have been like 2-year-old. And then we had a 1-year-old. Yeah, it was a 2 turning 3, 0 turning 1, basically. And then 6 weeks into starting our business, I found out my wife is pregnant with number 3. And I was like, I've got to make this work, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, when you say your wedding vows, it's in sickness and its health and richness and poor. I'm like, I don't know that my wife would stick around if we lose our house and live in a cardboard box. Like, I don't really want to test that either.
Yeah. I would recommend not testing that. So going back to before you started the business, you said you were in the military. So that's a really cool thing. I think at least you're the first guest that we've talked about this on the podcast. You may be the first one who's actually had a military background. You mentioned that it took you a little while to get through college. Was that because trying to balance the two of them was just difficult, or what exactly took so long?
Yeah, so I when I was in ROTC at UTA, which is basically Reserve Officer Training Corps, and for those who aren't in the military or don't know anything about it, it's basically a program in college to get people interested in becoming officers. And so you go and usually it's scholarship based. And so that was really my attraction to it was, number one, I played a lot of Call of Duty growing up. And so played like first person shooter video games. And I'm sure there was some patriotic, nationalism baked in there, but just loved the idea of shooting. And my dad didn't really he wasn't like a man's man. He was like a tech computer guy who loved building computers and things like that. So I didn't really get a lot of outdoor gun range experience. And so I think I really desired that. And the military was like the easiest way. Instead of paying to shoot, you get paid to shoot. And so, and shoot, bullets are expensive. So yes. I joined the military and instead of going through as an officer, I ended up enlisting halfway through school and went through basic training. And I ended up choosing the infantry because it was the shortest time in between semesters. And so my goal was to enlist, go to basic training from like May through September, come back and finish out college. Well, I got back from basic training, and then 3 days after going, I'd been accepted to UT Austin, and so excited about getting there. And 3 days after being on campus, I got deployed to Iraq. And
Wow.
so then I spent almost a year and a half in Iraq, and then came back, and then was about to finish school, and then got deployment orders to go to Afghanistan. And that's a whole nother story. Thank God I didn't have to go. But just when you have a plan in place, you think it's going to go perfect, and then the military just comes in and tells you, nope, that's not what you're doing. You're going over here.
Well, I mean, just out of my curiosity, how was that going, I guess, to Iraq and that experience? Because obviously that's, a pretty challenging time in itself.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I was in 8th grade when I remember seeing like the Twin Towers fall, and I didn't have any earthly clue or frame of reference for how significant of an event that was.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought, that's interesting. Oh, well, little Jimmy's mom came to pick him up from school. Like, how come my mom's not coming to get me? And so seeing how the military ramped up action in the Middle East during that time, I kind of started understanding the significance of it. But the reality is when you enlist, you kind of have this romanticized idea of what you think your job in the military is going to be and look like, because you see movies like, I don't know, Zero Dark 30, where they're going in after Osama bin Laden or whoever the terrorist is. And there was a lot of propaganda around like be all you can be, all these like, whether it's the Army or the Marines or the Navy. I mean, there's a lot of I can't remember exactly what the Navy's was, but like see the world and explore. And so it's like, oh, I'm gonna get to see all the world. Well, the reality is if you join the Navy, you're probably gonna see the inside 4 walls of the ship and not get to see. But so we get deployed, and thank God that was because I was in the infantry, it wasn't really necessarily skills based. Like if you were to go in the Army now and you go in as a cybersecurity expert,
Mm-hmm.
you can reasonably believe that you're going to leave the military with a marketable skill set.
Okay.
When you are in the infantry, you're just learning how to shoot, move, and communicate. And it's a lot of push-ups, a lot of sit-ups. And I know now that it really shaped me in the leadership standpoint. And so that is not necessarily a marketable skill when you're 20 years old. You don't know how to market that, but it certainly allows you to believe that you can do the impossible. And I think that those memories and those missions that we went on in Iraq really led me to understand confidence about myself and what I can achieve. And so I guess looking back in retrospect, it kind of makes sense. Oh, okay, no wonder he was successful early on in his business, because he could pursue things and take initiative and lead himself. And I think that all of those are important characteristics, but they're not necessarily things that you might learn outside the military.
Yeah. Well, I hear on a lot of podcasts, because AI is a huge topic and it's talked about on just about every business podcast I listen to. They say that probably the most important skill set that you could develop is communication.
Yeah.
Do you think that in and of itself, being in the military and having to communicate so clearly, do you think that is like the most important role you have today within your business, or maybe one of them at least?
I think the military is part of it. In the infantry, it's all male. And so you just say the most crass things around a bunch of other guys, and you kind of develop this like dark sense of humor to kind of help you cope to getting through certain circumstances. And so I think the communication is clear from an objective standpoint. Like let's say you need to move your troops from point A to point B, and you might encounter defensive encounters from point A to point B, and you'll have strategy. I think strategy was key, and then realizing, hey, when your strategy fails, that you have training and discipline to get you through it. Now, from a communication standpoint, it's like very clear, like you're being repetitious in how you communicate.
Mm-hmm.
But I think marriage was the thing that helped me to communicate in a corporate standpoint much better. And then even fathering and learning how to communicate to a child vision for their outcome of what you want them to do when they're doing a chore, or in marriage, like casting vision for where you want to go to, and then making that in a way that would allow other people to unify with you and come along on the journey. So I don't think the military was one piece, but I think these other life experiences that I've gone through have significantly helped me.
Yeah, that's cool. So we'll get into kind of what you do now, or I guess what it started as with just the health insurance. What exactly was it that sparked health insurance? Why that business? Because you mentioned earlier you wanted to start a business, but I mean, you could have started anything else.
I know. And parents say this all the time. You can, you have so much potential. You could do and be whatever you want. And it's like, you know what? I realize that is such an empowering statement, but it's kind of like, and not to just keep going back to bullets and shooting, but if I were to set gunpowder on a table and just light it, it would make kind of a flash, but it wouldn't really do anything. And that's kind of like when your mentors or your neighbors or your parents, whatever voice is shaping you as a young person, when they say you can be and do anything you want, I really wanted to be a business owner, but no one helped me shape that. And if you continue on that bullet analogy, when you put the same gunpowder behind something in a narrow focused, rifling, like a barrel,
Mm-hmm.
and you fire that same gunpowder, it makes a lot more direct and powerful impact than if you set it on the table and light it off. So I think as a young person, I had a hard time understanding what did business ownership look like. I mean, I wanted to be a trash truck guy, because I heard that they made a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of money is subjective. The person that told me that, maybe they do make a lot of money, but the lifestyle sucks. You smell like trash maybe when you get off work. But I think I had a lot of smaller experiences to peek behind what business ownership looked like. One of those being that my father-in-law owned a business. And so when I first got married, I got back from Iraq I got back from training for Afghanistan, and I just graduated. So I had all these big things I had been working on for years coming to a head where my military career was ending. I just graduated college. I just got married and had this opportunity to go work for my father-in-law as just an operations manager. Mm-hmm. And he owned a healthcare business where they supplied durable medical equipment to people who had just been discharged from a hospital. So, for example, think about someone who has respiratory issues now gets a prescription for oxygen. So he would provide the oxygen machines to these people. Mm-hmm. And I got to see behind the scenes of all this. I thought, oh my goodness, I'm about to step into my dream, because I'm he's going to hand me his business. I'm going to get to take it over. And what better way to step into business than starting your own business, but standing on the shoulders of someone else's business. And I get there and realize, number one, I love serving people. I am not the guy to serve sick people. Empathy is number 35 or 34 on my scale of strengths finders. And so it's second to the bottom. And I am more of a pull your boots up and go punch through, just keep going. So getting to, I guess, see what business look like and how there's so many different creative ways and expressions of business really helped me understand and hone in my desire to be a business owner.
Yeah. I feel like anybody that knows you would probably agree with this assessment that when I'm around you, you just naturally exude like an optimistic person. And I like how, whether it be the military or whether it be this business here, you do that romanticizing where you envision this beautiful future with flowers, and
then reality sinks in.
Exactly. So it sounds like that's kind of what interested you in the healthcare side of things, and then maybe you kind of transitioned into researching some other businesses that could be around healthcare in general?
That's exactly what happened. So I get in there, I'm like, this business is going to be great. And then I start seeing, and I didn't understand the finances of business, but I understood that finances, like we started having to lay people off. I'm like, I don't think this is a good thing, right? Like, and the part of this is like my father-in-law showed me more behind the scenes of like, I was only seeing one aspect, and then he showed me more and more and more about the business as a whole, and realized and gained an appreciation for business owners, business leaders. They're, even though an employee works in their specific department, they only have a responsibility for those few things. Mm-hmm. A business owner has responsibility for many things, and they all kind of interact differently. And so I realized very quickly that CMS, which is Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, which shapes healthcare as a whole, even on my side now in insurance, they were making dramatic changes that was causing his business to fail. And so eventually I decided, you know what, maybe this isn't the inheritance that I want to receive. And so I really prayed hard about it. And I felt like I was supposed to leave the business, which when I broke the news to my father-in-law, it really felt like a punch in the gut for him, because it was like his legacy. And that's what a mistake that many business owners, especially senior, older business owners, the mistake they make is simply tying their identity to their business. And if that business fails, their identity is also now kind of failed too. But that's another tangent. But I was able to then pray and think about what industry, if I could do and be anything I want, what industry do I want to be in? And all I knew is I want to make a lot of money. And so I Google what industries make the most money. And surprisingly enough, I found out in 37 of the 50 states, financial and insurance services had the highest margin. Mm-hmm. And since your show's called Chasing the Margin, I was chasing it. And so I then reached out to a family friend and realized he was a financial advisor. And I thought financial advisors know about emerging markets and things like that. And so I went to go ask him, and he's like, well, you should come work for me. And so that was my transition from working in the healthcare industry, serving what we had were patients, to then getting insurance license and working in the finance industry, which was, I didn't know at the time, but I was going to be adjacent to working in the healthcare industry, working with some of the same patients that we had at my father-in-law's business and what we now have as my insurance agency.
Okay. Well, one thing, and you said this earlier, about just enjoying helping people, aside from, just having a successful business, you also wanted to help people. And that was one of my curiosities when prepping for this episode is that one of the driving factors behind choosing health insurance, is because that's helping people with, I guess, the most important thing being their health that they have. Was that kind of a thought process, or? No,
but it's one of those things that you make plans, and then the Lord directs your steps. Mm-hmm. That was not on my mind. Looking back, you could say, wow, Sean, you're really smart for having taken this path here, but I wasn't that smart. I was like, all right, I know my income over here is about to disappear, so I'm going to go work for this insurance realm. And so I started working for the financial advisor, and then within about a year and a half, realized like I don't want to work for this specific industry or this specific genre within the overall industry. And I was praying, and it's one of those things that we had been through so many transitions as a family, and me as going through seeing the hardship of business behind the scenes. And we were too poor to go on vacation, but we had this opportunity where my uncle had like extra week at his timeshare, and he offered it to my twin brother. And then my twin brother Ryan was like, Sean, you want to come? I was like, yes. So we had a free vacation. We're in Colorado, and I'm just down at the lodge, like reading my Bible, and I felt so strong. And I didn't really know what it meant, like to hear the Lord. Mm-hmm. Like I'd been in church almost my entire life, but I just really didn't like, Moses had this burning bush and like these like very visible and audible experiences. And I didn't know what that meant or what that felt like. But that was the first time where I was reading my Bible and I felt like I was supposed to start an insurance agency doing specifically medical insurance. And I was like, I don't know anything about this. But my fleece at the time was, I'll know if this is God if my wife says yes. And now what I haven't told you is that because my wife, she grew up in a very affluent area, and her dad, my father-in-law, who I worked for, he had been extremely successful and sold his business for tens of millions of dollars back in the 90s. Ended up starting another business, ended up losing almost all of it. And then by the time we were almost like on our way out, like we were having to hold our paychecks just so that our team could cash their paychecks. And then we would sell a vehicle to float payroll. And it was like this like vicious cycle of like, are we going to be able to pay our mortgage this month? And it was one of those things where my wife built up this, and she would say this, it's not like I'm uncovering her in this moment, but she built up this insecurity or like this entanglement with insecurity. And so she needed security. So Sean was not going to own his own business. He was going to go work for these people and work a stable job where he got a paycheck. And so that's why my fleece was like kind of out there. Like I'm going to get confirmation that this is the right direction if my wife says yes to this. And so I go to her, I'm like, hey, Lauren, I feel like maybe I'm supposed to start my own insurance agency. And I was expecting to kind of like flinch and her be like, no, and like, hit me.
Yeah.
But I felt like she just immediately was like, yeah, I think you're right. And I was like, oh, maybe this is the Lord. And so I started taking steps toward that. And so when we finally got to the place where we made the leap, it was like very scary because we didn't have, again, any of the savings and things built up for it. But it was in the healthcare adjacent industry of being in medical insurance, except now instead of being on the provider side, I'm on the medical insurance side. And I can really see a thread throughout my life of being, hey, Sean's in these like avenues of the theme is he's protecting people, whether it's the Army. Before the Army, I was a lifeguard, protecting people at the pool, protecting people's well-being in the military. Now, then protecting people's finances in the financial advisory world, and then now in the insurance side. So it's kind of a neat and beautiful thread, even though I could have never planned that.
Yeah. I think my maybe intuition was correct, but it sounds like maybe God had this plan for you all along, and that's what's been happening, even if Sean didn't intentionally make all of those things happen.
I'm just now discovering it.
Yeah, we're just now figuring it out right now.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's also really interesting with your wife, because that's probably the number one reason why people don't go out and take the risk to bet on themselves and start their own business is the financial thing is just, it's scary.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how well you plan, how good you are at a craft. At the end of the day, sometimes people fail even if it's not anything they could have done about it. And the fact that she was so gung-ho after just having to go through all the stressors with you, in your early part of your marriage, that's pretty incredible that she basically immediately said yes to it.
Well, yeah, and there's a verse that talks about in the Bible, it says, where there's unity, God commands a blessing. And so I've really felt like, hey, if I go and do this behind her back, like it may not work out the same way as if I get her on the same page, so that when we do start it, I mean, every small business requires a level of exertion that is maybe above and beyond the lifestyle we want. And what I mean by that is that when I first started the business, it was out of the home office. We had 2 young kids, and I literally was on the phone all day, every day for like 6 days a week. I'd take an hour break for dinner and then spend some time with the kids. And then once they were in bed, I was back at it trying to figure out, build a website, do this, and make our business more viable.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to hear your opinion. It was one of the last few guests we've had on. They basically said that if you're going to start a business, then just assume for the next 2 years, you're not going to have much of a life.
Yeah.
Is that about the time frame that you feel like you experienced? Do you feel like it was longer? You feel like it can be shorter?
I would say that can be an experience for some people. Now, having gone through that experience, it doesn't have to be that way. But let me tell you what my business looked like, and then the flip side of people who might be trying to start a business. And so, so Sean Turner is just now starting his insurance agency, trying to figure out a name for it, trying to figure out who his clients are going to be, and land on the product or service that we're offering. So I went through a million names to try to find one, and all the best names I thought were out there were already taken. Like that domain, I'm like, dadgummit, that domain's already taken. So landed on Buffer Benefits, and at the time I was like, Buffer's like a sense of strength. And then like 6 months after I had already committed to that, I was like, you know what, millennials, the word buffer to them is like your video's not loading on the because your internet's buffering. I was like, maybe this isn't that great. But anyways, fast forward, you're like building this out. I read a book called The Art of War, which is like probably, I don't know, a couple thousand years old. And one of the key takeaways I took when I was just starting this business was when you're small, look big, and when you're big, look small. And I thought, you know what, that's really wise right now, because one of the reasons why people buy anything, any product or service, in this case insurance, is because they trust you. And can they trust you if you look like you're selling insurance out of the back of your car? And I was like, the answer is probably no. And so I was like, one way to build trust is all right, how do I look bigger than I actually am? And so something simple like our phone system dial pad allowed me to, instead of just handing out my cell phone number, I handed out my voice over IP electronic number, and I ended up building like a phone tree. So like press 1 for individual, press 2 for employer benefits, press 3 for whatever. And no one knew at the time that every single one of those departments ended up with the same person, me. But then that's another reason why I didn't name it like Sean Turner Insurance Agency, because I had a vision in mind that this is going to be bigger than me one day. And most insurance agencies is just the producer and then maybe a office assistant, and that's it. I was like, I don't want it. I want it to be bigger than that. And so there's very strategic things I did. But to answer your question, it was one of those things that when I started it, I was starting from scratch, and I didn't have a vision for what I wanted it to look like. I just had this word from God, and maybe I could have gone back and been more strategic in a lot of areas. I just wasn't equipped to do it at the time, and so it was a grind. Now having done that in the grind for 2 years, I think 2 years is probably that's right around the mark where I started to see a shift, because I hired my first employee at a 1.5 year mark. And in doing that was like the best thing ever, because it took a lot of weight off my shoulders to continue to provide service to our clients. But there's another concept. It's so you're talking about building a business versus buying a business. And I really think that buying a business that already has some skeleton framework is maybe the easy button on getting into entrepreneurialism. And because there's so many businesses out there, in fact, they call it the gray tsunami. There's so many 65 or older business owners that are about to step in retirement, and there's enough business banks and loans out there available for people to buy a business, and you can kind of skip the whole grind when you buy a business. Now, obviously, you want to buy a business kind of like Warren Buffett does, buy a business that might have problems, but that are easy maybe to fix or to scale. And so that's what I would do differently is now that I've known enough about business. But at the same time, if you don't know anything about business and you buy one, you might run it into the ground. So that grind really does, I think, help. But then surrounding yourself with wise people too, and wise counsel can really, because, there's a statement a lot of people make. It's like, experience is what is it? I know what I always say, but let me see this. It's experience is the best teacher. And it's like, no, I always say that other people's experiences are the best teacher.
Yeah.
And so, because when you learn from other people's experiences, you don't have to pay the price that they did if they had failures.
Yeah, well, that's the real trick behind the podcast is I have all these business owners come on, and then I ask them all the questions that I want to know.
Yeah, and then you go implement it.
Yeah, then I go implement it. Exactly.
That's great. So I'll send you the invoice after this then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's all really good advice, though. With I really like that saying. I guess you said it was in the book. If you're small, look big, and if you're big, look small.
Yeah.
Because I think that even with our experience with clients, sometimes if a client feels like you're too big for them, then it creates this friction where it's like they get maybe frustrated at things that wouldn't have frustrated you if they didn't have this opinion of you automatically, and then vice versa. If somebody's too big, then they feel like you don't have the knowledge base to help them, so you have to represent yourself accordingly.
There's a big shift that you might, now that I say it, and some people are like, yeah, Sean, I've known about that. But if you look at businesses as a whole and think about large businesses like Facebook or Meta, one of the shifts that they started making a few years ago was that they tried to humanize Meta by introducing the founder, Mark Zuckerberg. And I think it really started a couple years ago when he made a presentation in front of Congress. There's so many memes out there with the dude in the suit with pale face, short hair, looks like an alien. Everyone was like, this guy's not even human. He's a reptile. And now you see the dude and he's got long curly hair. He's wearing a t-shirt with a necklace and he looks like another dude. He doesn't look like this reptilian suit guy. And they really transformed. And I don't know if this was a personal transformation or if this was an intentional PR thing, but they started putting him in front of everything and they tried to use him to humanize Facebook and Meta. And it really is a genius move from a large corporation standpoint, is to take the founder or take some key executive and make them the face. And then that way people don't trust organizations, they trust people.
Yeah.
But there is a massive distrust right now, especially in the government, for lying, or people don't trust institutions, they trust people. And so I think that's a key thing any business can do is, and I am preaching to myself right now, I get so caught up in the day-to-day that I forget the weight I could have if I were to present myself on either social media or whatever medium it is to really humanize my own business, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, even just little things such as, scheduling a meeting or having a phone call, the human interaction versus sending an email or just sending something to somebody, it takes the level down because like you're saying, everybody realizes, hey, we're all human. We're all trying to do the best we can. If you're in business and I'm in business, well, all we're really trying to do is both trying to provide for our families and have a good life with our family. And if you're upset about something that I did, or if I'm upset about something that you did, if we just sit down and have a human conversation, maybe we could figure it out without yelling at each other.
Yeah. Well, and I think those, for example, my own team, I talked to them about, we can't just send emails. I know an email is easy for you to just get out and send it, but calling the client, you end up talking about things other than just the objective at hand, which is maybe renewal of their insurance policy. You find out about, hey, last week my son broke his arm or whatever, all the other pieces that make you realize that this is a human. Plus, in an email, you can't tell someone's tone. And on a phone, you can laugh, you can cry, you can make that connection.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's get into what you started with and also what you guys do now. So back when you first started, you said it was health insurance. How did you first start? Was it health insurance to individuals? Did you jump into shooting for businesses immediately? How did that go?
A lot of it started with I volunteered at my church quite a bit in the stewardship department, and they asked me, they said, Sean, would you be willing to talk about Medicare to a class? And I was like, sure, yeah. And I went home, I told my wife, I'm like, I don't know anything about Medicare. I just knew it might be a good opportunity. So I said yes. And I already had my insurance license, but Medicare was one of those things that I just was Googling Medicare for dummies type thing, you know? And I got enough knowledge in it to where I could teach the class. And about like 2 days leading up to the class, the event coordinator at the church reached out to me. They're like, Sean, we have to change the room because it's sold out. I'm like, so how many people are expected at this thing? Because I was picturing in my head like 15 people, you know? They're like, oh, we have 200 people registered. I was like, holy smokes, what do you mean? And I realized then, I was like, Medicare is something that is people require a lot of education around. And so we did a seminar on Medicare, and I wasn't able to sell it. I wasn't able to do anything except tell people about it and off of YouTube, you know? And so I was careful, like when they asked me questions, like, you know what, I have no idea. Let me get back to you. And then I would follow up with them. And so what's funny is we did that 200-person event, and then the next week we did it again. It was like 150. We did it again. It was like 100. And we just did it until there was like 5 people left. And I ended up talking to several hundred people over a course of like 8 weeks because I ended up doing the tour. Like, hey, this class was so impactful. Let's do it at all the other campuses. And I realized like this is the niche I want to start in is working with seniors to help them with this transition. And that was how I started. And then, but I really had a passion for business and business owners and understanding how other businesses operated. And that's when I made the transition to help with employer medical benefits. And then today we have, 12 employees, a couple international employees, which I'd like to talk about because it has a lot to do with chasing margin.
Yeah.
And then we're in like 47 states. And so we have employer clients in Alaska and New York, California, Florida, even though our headquarters is here based in Dallas-Fort Worth.
Yeah. And is most of your clientele now business owners, or is it still pretty split?
No, about 75% of our revenue comes from employer medical benefits. And then about 20%, maybe 23% comes from Medicare with seniors. And then we have independent agents, which we coach. And we have about 35 independent agents. And then we have commercial insurance now too. So that's been more of a newer transition, but we have a team built around that to help. And so this is actually my first time publicly to say that. It's one of those things we didn't want to tell anyone because we wanted to make sure we knew all the ins and outs. We had access to the right markets and things like that. And it's we've been slow rolling it out because we want to do it well. We want to do it with excellence. We don't want to just leave people hanging and say, oh, we can help you here, and then fall flat.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. I mean, congrats on all that.
Yeah.
Well, I have a bunch of questions around kind of the insurance side and your clientele and who you're helping and stuff.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you might be the first guest with some international experience that we've had on. And I know that lots of our client base has international people that they currently have as employees, or they're considering it. So I'd love to give you the opportunity to kind of share about that and your experience.
So I had a Medicare client. This guy was, it's funny because he was an employer client, his business was, and then he was retiring, and so he became a Medicare client. And I was meeting in his home, and this guy I had a lot of respect for because his business was very successful. And when I found out that his assistant who worked part-time made $175,000 a year, I thought, I don't think that's normal. And so I was like, I want to know what this guy's doing in his business to have that much margin to pay his assistant that well. Well, I'm meeting at his house, and I was like, Mike, tell me, if you were to start today, this guy's like 75, 80 at the time. I was like, what would you do differently? And he sat there and he paused, and it was like the longest pause ever. I was like, did he just freeze on me? Like, do I need to ask the question again? And he finally he clasped his hands together. So I knew he wasn't just like frozen. And he's like, you know what? I would go international as fast as I can. And I was like, it's such a broad statement. I don't even know what that means. I was like, can you expound upon what you're saying? He's like, Sean, there are people with talent just as good, maybe better than you at what you're doing, that are in these countries that have almost next to nothing in resources that you can tap into at a much lower cost. And that he didn't have any more to say on that. I was just like, oh, okay. So I start like really percolating on this idea and realize, you know what? I need to start looking into this and make a serious move. And so I then found a resource to try to figure out, how do I hire someone international? In the first place, I mean, a lot of people have this negative stigmatism on hiring international because they've called customer support, and it's someone who has this really thick accent that has no authority, and you just feel like you're getting the runaround. And so I was like, I don't want that for my clients. And so what area of my business can I do? And we have a lot of data entry as far as like getting quotes and then collecting client information and stuff. And it's all behind the scenes. And I was like, I don't want to pay someone $25 an hour, $30 an hour to do this. So we found someone in the Philippines, and the Philippines is very unique. And let me back up real fast. There's a lot of places you can hire international. And I'll get to a few more as to what certain places are better than others and where to stay away from. But the Philippines economy is basically a 24/7 economy. What I mean by that is that their time zone is completely flipped from ours. So 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. is like nighttime there. Like people should be sleeping. But because 80% of the workforce in the Philippines work for what they call business process outsource, BPO, with countries in Europe or America, they pretty much are awake 24/7 in the sense of like the city's always operating.
Right.
And so I was like, you know what? I found this job board and decided that I was going to try to hire someone. But before you go and you hire someone, you want to kind of look at the jobs that are listed. And I saw, there's lots of skills here, from SEO, like search engine optimization people, to graphic designers, to accounting, to whatever. You know, there's a million gigs out there, trades. And I hired one to be a sales appointment setter for me. And that was before, this is my first time around. I did a lot of research on the previous job postings and realized these people make like $3 an hour. I was like, and that was good for them. And so I ended up, so essentially you can hire someone in the Philippines, pay them between $500 and $1,000 a month, and they will work 40 hours plus a week for you. 40 hours a week for you. So you're paying them basically through PayPal or Wise.com or some other way. And there's almost no friction between the Filipino government and the U.S. And so we started implementing them, and I made a few failures and stuff like that, but I got pretty good at hiring international. One of the things I felt was important was that this person speaks English, because I'm like, I don't speak Tagalog. Tagalog is the native tongue of Philippines. And so I've got to be able to communicate. So the very first thing I did was I put the job posting, and then I had at the very bottom, because the person I was looking for is very detail oriented. So I didn't put it at the top. I wanted to put it at the very bottom because I wanted them to read through the entire document and then see the steps. And step one was take this English proficiency assessment. And I found this website, I think it's called Vervoe, VERVOE.com. And I was surprised, Troy, when I posted this, and I was like, I don't know what this is going to result in. Click post. I had like 100 applicants within 24 hours.
Wow.
I thought, holy smokes, like what? And I went to the English proficiency test, and every single one of those, probably 80% of those people took the English proficiency assessment. And I was like, I'm not even going to look at those people's resumes who didn't do this, because I'm looking for detail oriented, and the instructions said do step one, and they didn't do it. So they're not hired, you know? So I went and I got the top 10 people who followed all steps and had a high English proficiency score. And I only interviewed them, and found that there's a lot of great candidates. And so that was my initial push into international. And that has helped our margins significantly. If you can offload a lot of this data entry or these low level, very process oriented jobs, perfect for an outsourced person. But since the Philippines, I've also looked at other countries too. So I was thinking, hey, we're in Texas, and you know what? We have a lot of Hispanic speaking people. Why don't I try to hire someone in Colombia? Colombia is directly south of Texas, so same time zone. I'm like, that's killer. Like, it's not even a strain, because I know it's a strain for our employees in the Philippines, because, I mean, night shifts are not that great. They're not conducive to having a family and things like that. And so looked in Colombia. There's a lot of international regulation with that government in the U.S. And so if you want to hire from there, you have to go through this whole registration process and get approved. And then there's just a lot of red tape. I was like, nah, I don't want to deal with that. So then I started looking at other places. In fact, just a couple weeks ago, I spoke with the chancellor of Northrise University. And Northrise University is unique because it's one of like 4 universities in Zimbabwe. And I thought, you know what, I learned more about the country. Well, Zimbabwe, I think, was a British controlled territory all the way up until like 1970. And you know, with the Brits, they only like to speak English, even though it's a little weird version of ours.
Yeah, they're the weird ones, not us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they required everyone to speak English first. And so in Zimbabwe, they have an English first language. I'm like, well, there goes, like, I'm sure they have a softer accent and things like that. And that's one thing I learned even with the Filipino culture is, like, Americans are very abrasive. We're quick to interrupt people when they're talking. We're, like, very aggressive. And the Filipino culture is much more passive. Mm-hmm. And even if you take a personality assessment and it shows that they're aggressive people, they're not.
They're aggressive for their culture.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there are cultural differences, but from a margin standpoint, I can tell you it has been a game changer for us, and it's freed us up so we can pay our own staff more, or introduce and have new experimentation on different things that I know other insurance agencies our size in our industry would dream about, because they also aren't doing what we're doing.
Yeah, I think as the economy goes through cycles, you know, eventually, you know, business owners start to make more, but then wages start to catch up, and then that creates that challenge of trying to find the right people, but then the right people demand a higher price. And like you're saying, having that international tool, it gives those people a job, which is great to give those international people a great job that is a safe place for them, that pays a good wage for them. But then it also allows you to pay the right people here in the U.S. A good wage to keep them around. So
it's a win-win. Yeah, because we're paying our team in the Philippines way more than they would earn from a similar job in their home country. And then even with our own employees, able to reinvest into them more than another agency our same size. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you started to move outside of just doing the health insurance stuff, one of the things that I wanted you to talk about was just kind of some of the different offerings that you guys have now. Would you consider yourself like a general benefits company now? Do you still focus on health insurance? What exactly does Buffer do now?
Yeah, we have really worked hard on making ourselves indispensable to our clients. And so what I mean by that is that we started off with just, hey, there's a lot of people that are turning 65 and we want to get on Medicare. And we got that. There's not a lot of movement there. Now, one thing with healthcare in general is that it's always changing, and it's not necessarily because science is getting better. It's because the money is changing. And so the government, and I mentioned CMS earlier, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, they are the linchpin to shaping how healthcare looks. And so when they switch their payment method or payment model, it will change consumers' behaviors because of deductibles changing and all this stuff. But from our offering, we are very much invested into business owners, to HR professionals, and many times risk management or CFOs and controllers at companies. And so every one of those leaders has a different idea as to what they want their benefits to look like. Controllers, they just want it to be least costly as possible. And they're like, hey, we see this going up 10% over a year. We gotta cut it out. And the HR people are like, how am I supposed to recruit someone if we have crappy benefits? And the business owner is kind of mixed, like he's kind of seeing it from all angles. And so we do recognize that businesses can be more competitive if they have really good medical benefits in place. And that might be medical insurance, dental, vision, life, but also realizing that the people that they're hiring all have different perspectives on how they think that should look. And so you have to have flexible benefits. You have to have benefits that are going to be attractive to the 26-year-old who just came off their parents' plan, but never goes to the doctor and thinks that they're invincible. So they want the least amount of money out of pocket, like coming out of their paycheck. And then you have older workforce who they've been through some stuff, and maybe their job right now is giving them heart issues, so they want to have a doctor. And so I think having a very clear and articulated benefits program, but that's simple enough for people to understand. Troy, I mean, we've been into businesses where we've taken over the agent of record and we're finding out what their benefits look like, and they'll have 17 plans and they all look very similar. I'm like, why do you guys have 17 plans? Like if I were to go to the grocery store and see 17 different types of ketchup, how am I supposed to know which ketchup I'm supposed to buy?
Yeah.
So having a very clear and articulated plan is in rolling out that plan as the business changes is incredibly important. So for example, like we talk to a lot of businesses who are just now offering benefits for the first time. And so usually those employers might be anywhere from 4 employees to 15 employees, somewhere in that ballpark, where they're starting to realize, like, you know what? I'm hitting a brick wall on growing my team. No one wants to come work here because we don't have benefits. What do I do? But then they also may not have the budget for it. Mm-hmm. And so we usually talk them through offering ancillary lines, which would be like the dental and the vision and the life insurance and the short-term disability, things like that first, because that's a lot less expensive and those provide some really good value. And then kind of giving them a roadmap for what their benefits could look for as their business matures. And I think that sounds really simple when I say that, and it is. But a lot of people, they get confused with all the things out there to offer. And your benefits should be something used to attract and retain employees. But it's not the only thing valuable to attract and retain employees.
Yeah. Well, this is something that I'm curious about now that you said this, and this kind of sparked in my head. I think that a lot of times when people are considering health insurance, it can become, like you're saying, and there's studies on this, where there's so many options that if you're given too many options, it's almost like that, well, I can't figure it out. I don't want to spend the time to do it, so I'm just not going to do anything. Yeah. And when you narrow it down to a few options, it's palatable. And they can decide. So going back to bringing in the talent for some of these business owners that are still a small size business, is there a way to I don't know how to put it in a better way, but like white label to where they offer insurance, but really all they're doing is playing the connector, where it's like the insurance is not really completely under their business, but they at least can offer, like, we're going to connect you with this insurance and we're going to deduct it out of your payroll, but it's not like just that business's plan.
Yeah, ideally, so like, for example, the individual marketplace. So let me describe this. So employers with large amount of people enrolled into their benefits, they form their own risk pool. And if you hire healthy people, your risk pool is low, and so therefore your rates are low. Versus if you're just playing the connector and there's a random plan out here on the internet that you want to connect them to, that there is like things like ICHRA's individual health reimbursement arrangements, ICHRA's, that you can use to connect someone where you're like, hey, I know from a predictable standpoint that my budget is only $200 per month per employee. That's it. No ifs, ands, buts. That's very predictable. And when you use the ICHRA, you're only paying $200. Now it's up to the employee to figure out, how do I want to spend that $200? Do I want to go get a very robust PPO plan with any doctor I want in network, or do I want to have a slim down network on an HMO and have low copays? And so, in an ideal world, we would just have better options available. But with legislation and honestly, with government subsidies going into the individual marketplace, it is insane. Like, I saw a family with making a household income of $150,000 getting a $900 a month subsidy, which most employers out there cannot afford to pay $900 a month towards each of their employees' benefits. And so it is becoming harder for employers to keep up with the government and the subsidies that they're providing to still stay competitive. And so the landscape's changing quite dramatically. But when it comes to insurance, no one wants to pay for a service and not get any value from it. But at the same time, you don't want to get value from your health insurance plan necessarily, because that means that you're having health issues. And so I think there is a major shift changing where people are taking control and advocating for their own health, because maybe there's a lot of cash pay options available, and those doctors don't want to take insurance. And so people's behavior habits are changing with how they want to utilize the dollars in their mind that are earmarked towards healthcare.
Yeah. One of my friends is actually a nurse, and she does different things in the medical field. But she went, I can't remember what the procedure was, but she went to get a procedure done, and it was one of those things where if she wanted to use her insurance, then it was going to be like a $600 copay or something like that. But then if she just paid for it in cash, it was $200. And it was like,
what's the point of having insurance? Yeah. And so there is, let me talk about this because we see this most often in pharmacy benefits. And so I'll give a perfect example. My wife, she was heating up water in a microwave. Oh yeah, this is when we were still like bottle feeding our young kids, and she was gonna give me she was heating up the water in the microwave to put the bottle to heat it up, and as she was pulling out the water from the microwave, it splashed out of the container and landed on her arm and burned her arm very good, like really bad. And I wasn't at home. She went to the doctor and they gave her a prescription for this like burn ointment. I can't remember the name of it. And she's like, Sean, can you pick this up on your way home? I was like, sure, yeah. And I go there, I present our insurance card, and we have pretty good insurance. And they're like, this is $70. I'm like, ooh, this is still like early on in our business. I'm like, $70. I call Lauren. I'm like, how bad is the burn? And I was like,
is it $70 bad?
Yeah, because it was not like a tub. It was like a tiny little thing that might have lasted like a day or two, you know?
Sure.
And I was like, golly, healthcare is so expensive. Then I remember, you know what? I'm going to try GoodRx. Mm-hmm. And GoodRx is free. You just a lot of times the pharmacies have the card on the counter. And I was like, all right, scratch the insurance. How much is the same thing with GoodRx? She's like, oh, well, okay, yeah. And she looks up and it's like $30 for a bigger tub than what I was going to pay for $70 for a smaller one with insurance. I thought, something's wrong with this. Mm-hmm. If I'm paying for this service here and then this service over here is free, what's broken here? And it led me down this whole path of looking at pharmacy benefit managers and how you just have to follow the money. And our whole healthcare system's broken because of the misaligned incentives out there for all these middlemen and organizations. And so long story short, just because someone does have insurance doesn't mean it is the best use to utilize that insurance for the health care that they need.
Well, I want to take some time. I'll ask one more question, and then I want to kind of ask a more general question. On the business owners specifically, when it comes to your clientele, you have a pretty wide range as far as like number of employees and types of businesses and stuff. What is like the biggest factor that causes something to either maybe they need a different type of insurance or maybe their insurance is more expensive? Like, what are some of the key things that come into play? Is it those things? Are there other factors based off businesses that may change those?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to the businesses need to have conversations with, like, the leaders in those businesses need to have conversations with their employees to figure out what do they want, because the business owner or the HR professional may be offering them something that they could care less about. Mm-hmm. And so really using Google Forms and different anonymous survey type of, there's a ton of technology out there to get this information, but coming up with a really good questionnaire to offer your employees to say, hey, we want to serve you well, and we want to make sure that you have things that anchor you here. You don't have to use that language, but that's what the whole point is, to make sure that they feel like they're getting a benefit here that they can't get elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And just kind of figuring out, get a general rule of thumb. But the reality is, like, there's so many tragic events that happen every single day, whether it's, hey, I found out I had cancer, or I got into a motorcycle wreck, or one of my own employees had emergency appendectomy and got her appendix removed. And so it's one of those things that healthcare really is there for the big ticket items, because you see some of these bills and there's several $100,000. Well, insurance just saves someone from going bankrupt. And so I think knowing in the back of your mind that we don't necessarily need to have plans that are going to pay for every single willy-nilly healthcare item, but they are going to protect us from financial ruin.
Okay, so is that kind of how you approach a lot of it, and you just kind of have a transparent conversation with the business owner to see, hey, what's the most important things to you? And if they say the most important thing is to keep somebody from really having those big ticket items, then you just kind of gear the conversation that way? Yeah,
because you can hear something from a business owner and then look at their benefits and then realize what he's saying or what she's saying and what I'm seeing here is not aligned. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times it's like, I want every employee to be on this plan to protect them. And then we look at the participation ratio, and it's like 10% of people who are eligible are enrolled. It's like, Mr. or Mrs. Business Owner, what you thought was an anchor here for your team is not, because no one's enrolled. So that means that they don't see value in this. And so that's usually when we have these conversations to kind of do a whole overhaul to make sure that we're getting a strategy that's actually getting results.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to maybe the financial side of your brain and the margin side of your brain. Is like, if they're using the phrasing, whether it be anchor, whether it be something else, they're trying to retain and attract talent.
Yeah.
Then that's a thing that is helping their bottom line by keeping those people on. And you knowing, at least as a business owner yourself and understanding finance, it's like, this is not doing anything that you think it is doing.
Yeah. Well, and they might have started it out and it did.
Right.
But over time, because costs going up and things like that, and no one keeping an eye on it, it slowly diminished the purpose for which it was started out as.
Yeah. Okay, so last kind of subject matter question, and this will be the softball for you. So you mentioned that the healthcare system is broken. So what about it is broken? And tell us how to fix it, because it's an easy solution. That's why it's a problem. How would you fix it? What do you think is broken about it?
Oh man, that's a topic that could open a whole new can of worms. Well, also realizing that your legislators have a lot to do with how they represent healthcare in the marketplace. And so obviously, like the Affordable Care Act was one of these bills that got shoved through, and every politician was asked, so what's in it? Oh, we'll have to pass it to see, because there's like a million revisions to it that happened last minute. And then now it's passed. It's like, oh, well, this has had a dramatic change. Some really good changes came from it, like people who have pre-existing conditions have to be accepted on certain plans. That's a really good thing, to not eliminate someone from accessing healthcare because of a pre-existing condition. But it also then set up obstacles, unintended, I guess, problems that have arose. But also realizing that a lot of healthcare is dictated by people who are not elected. And what I mean by that is Centers for Medicaid Services. CMS is a large shaper of healthcare and how it's used. But those people are not elected. They are appointed by the people elected. And so they get in there, and a lot of 3-letter agencies are this way, where it's they get in there and they're making regulations and rules. They're not laws, but people have to follow them, and it's shaping society. My biggest thing is, hey, if you want to have good healthcare in your business, promote a value of health in your business as a core value, and that means health from a physical standpoint, health from a mental standpoint, and health from a spiritual standpoint. And I think if you are able to advocate for a value of health in your business, people are going to feel better. They're going to have more energy. They're going to have more focus, more attention span, and you'll get leaps and bounds. And those decisions don't happen overnight, but they take time to really feel. But once you have a team that's like, we have some people at the office who are like, yeah, I'm on the Nike Run Club app, and they have 20 miles this month, and I'm only at 9, and like there's some competition in the office, or even people, and if your listeners want to go to our website, bufferinsurance.com, they click on, I think it's the About Us page. If you scroll to the bottom, we actually have one of our values is health, and we have 3 statements. I couldn't memorize it and tell you what they are, but one of them includes advocating for this lifestyle of health so that we can be there tomorrow for our clients. And I think that shift in your mind has to be at the forefront of anyone's long-term healthcare decisions for themselves and their families.
Yeah. Well, one stat that I heard recently, I don't remember how far back. It was a long ways back. It might have been 30 or 50 years back. I think that like this year, within the last couple of years, and they were talking about Ozempic is what they were talking about, but they mentioned that it was the first time in like that 30 or 50 year period where the obesity rate for the U.S. had gone down. And it was like the first time in a long time. And I think a lot of it goes back to what you're saying, where people are actually trying to implement healthier habits. Ozempic is, I guess a cheap way to do it. I don't know if I should say that. Maybe it's not, but it's a different way to do it. We'll say that.
Well, Ozempic, we saw a surge in this because Ozempic has been prescribed for people who have diabetes for many years. But then all of a sudden someone figured out, we can, it's a weight loss thing. Well, the unintended consequences of Ozempic now are that people are having irreversible gut damage and things like that. And so Ozempic might be one of those things it's giving people short-term results, but if they rely on it for too long, it could be damaging to their health long-term. And so I think that building healthy habits, whether it's exercising daily or maybe just 2 or 3 times a week. I mean, I think a B+ student might be better than that person who takes it to the nth degree for a 21-day period, and then after they're done with their diet or whatever that they committed to, fall right back into it and maybe worse because they restricted themselves too badly.
Yeah, we actually had the guest before you as a dietitian, and that was what he said was with his clients. He works one-on-one with people that the most important thing by far is consistency.
Yeah.
And he said basically the exact same thing. that you just said, which is people always try to take it too far to start, and it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
And then they'll see great results, but then because they can't sustain that level, they just revert right back to where they were at the start, and then they get discouraged.
Yeah.
And I think whether it's business, health, anything, probably consistency is one of the most important things that you could ever do.
100%. Yeah.
So let's jump into just some general questions, just to learn a little bit more about Sean, and then we'll wrap up here. So you mentioned, and I know this about you, volunteer work. You volunteer at your church, and I know that you do lots of different volunteer things. So what's your favorite volunteer activity that you like to do?
Oh man, right now it's we have something at my church called Mercy Culture, which is in the Fort Worth area, called Distinct Business, and it is activating Christian business leaders to lead their businesses with a spiritual lens, and activating that. Yes, we're called. There's so many business principles in the Bible, and oh my goodness, just like we have tons of curriculum and small groups and things like that. And so, as far as my church goes, volunteering in that manner to activate Christian business leaders and entrepreneurs is like such a passion of mine right now. And we've seen so much headwind where people who are new believers, they see this and they're like, wow, I didn't know this because I didn't read my Bible.
Yeah, I think that our business is also a faith-based business as well with the CPA firm, and it's always really interesting hearing people talk about their different groups or volunteer spaces and talk about the business owners and their space within religion, things like that. It's pretty interesting. The other thing that you've mentioned a couple times is your family. So tell us a little bit about your family.
Oh man, I've been married for 13 years. My wife is a firecracker. She is such a strong leader, and she's so how do I say this? Like, just in our family, like, she knows how to keep me in line, and our kids too. And we've been on this journey, honestly, recently, where we started homeschooling 2 years ago. And I mean, I used to make fun. I was like the king of making fun of homeschoolers. Like, I would see someone with high waters and thought, oh, they're homeschooled. Like, is it flooding in here, or are those just high waters, you know? Like, if their pants too short. And we've gotten to this space where our lives were so busy, we had to figure out a way to restructure everything so that it wasn't so busy. And homeschooling was like the only answer. And so I remember early on, we would just be rushing out the door to leave for school, and our school was like 20 minutes away, and like making sure they had their lunches and their water bottles and, you know, all these things with the young kids is stressful. And then it was always, are you picking them up today, or am I picking them up today? And it was like this whole thing. And now, like, Lauren spends, I don't know, 45 minutes maybe with each kid each day, and school's done. And it's allowed us to do jujitsu and horseback riding lessons and art lessons, and not have to like fit them all in those hours between 4 and 8 p.m. And so that has been a lot of fun for me recently.
Awesome. Well, what's your favorite thing to do with your family? Like, favorite activity?
Oh man, I think it's all three of my kids can ride a bike, which I'm so proud to say I was the one to teach them. Teaching a kid how to ride a bike, like, your back hurts because you're like leaning down, trying to push them, and they're trying to yell at them, pedal, pedal. And then they just get upset with themselves or upset with you. And it's all these emotions. And so making it through that, and then just going for a bike ride around the park or like around the neighborhood with the kids is such a relaxing thing, because we're not on like screen time with our phones and whatnot. But then also, I don't know, I grew up playing a lot of video games. So this is complete opposite. Like, we love spending time outside, riding bikes, but then my kids love Fortnite, and they've got me into it. And I used to think that game was so stupid. I'm like, that's for kids. And then I'm like over here playing with them.
Yeah.
And it's fun because we can play as a team to accomplish something. And so, like, we'll squad up and do something together. And and maybe it's because it's reminiscent of my military days or even
Yeah.
just my own childhood, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I still love going to the movies, and like it's the most impractical thing. The food's too expensive. You're going to pay to watch something that you could have just watched at home anyway.
Yeah.
But it's that like childhood feeling,
Nostalgia.
the
Yeah.
nostalgia
Yeah,
of it.
yeah.
So I completely relate to like just having the nostalgia feeling and just enjoying it.
Absolutely.
So, and then the last question that we always like to ask the guest is if you could give any advice to whether it's somebody considering getting into business or an entrepreneur that's struggling or maybe even somebody that's successful, just in general, what would you tell them?
I would say read as many books as possible because everyone says, oh, you need a mentor. Well, all the mentors I thought I wanted, you either had to pay tens of thousands of dollars for access to them, or they were so famous that you would only get access to them if you were also a celebrity. And a lot of these people have books. And so getting on Audible and just listening to them in the car or reading a physical book, I would say read as many things as you can to get as much perspective and ideas about business, about professionalism, about sales, and consume as much as you can constantly, because there's so much out there that will help shape your thinking. And a lot of us have incorrect thinking that was either from constraints that we put on ourselves about self-limiting beliefs, or our parents put on us, or our circumstances. And so if you can cast off all those self-limiting beliefs and expose yourself to content that you haven't consumed yet that would help you become successful, you should do it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's great advice. Great episode. Thank you so much, Sean,
Thanks,
for
Troy.
coming on.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting me.